Even ammo that can't punch leather is on the chopping block. So if you're confident the rounds in your range bag are safe, you might want to think twice. When regulators last pulled a stunt like this, they backed off, but only after regrouping behind closed doors for less than a week. Today, we're breaking down how military-grade cartridges can be reclassified from legal to contraband by bureaucratic decree alone, and why 2026 could be the next big ambush on your ammo stash. Back in early 2015, the ATF rocked the firearms community by attempting to remove AIM 855, the famous 62-grain green tip, from its sporting exemption. The excuse? AR-15 pistols, legally classified as handguns due to short barrels and no buttstock. The ATF argued that any ammo fired in them should be reviewed under handgun rules. That opened the door to label the green tip as armor-piercing, since U.S. Code Title 18, Section 921. Subsection A17 defines any handgun ammo with cores made entirely of steel, tungsten, or similar metals as armor-piercing. Technically, AIM 855 has a small steel tip, but its core is mostly lead, a fact that didn't stop the agency's memo from declaring it illegal for civilians. The push triggered outrage. Tens of thousands of comments slammed the Federal Register. National shooting groups, ammo makers, veterans, and everyday range-goers formed a rare alliance. And even cautious lawmakers spoke out against the agency making regulatory law without approval. Under the pressure, the ATF walked it back in just over a month, but the law itself never changed. The green tip exemption still rests on shaky administrative footing. One new rule, one internal memo, and poof, no green tip. And when that happens, expect match-grade loads, bonded defensive bullets, and even budget range rounds to triple in price overnight. Green tip supplies the entire 5.56 by 45 mm ecosystem. Strip it out, and the economy of America's most popular service rifle collapses without a single law being passed. This next story wasn't a close call. It hit dead center. In 2014, the Russian 7 November 6, arguably the cheapest and most available surplus cartridge for the AK-74, was yanked from U.S. markets almost instantly. There were no stats about crime spikes, no public hearings, just an obscure administrative directive buried in paperwork. The spark? A little-known importer tried to get Olympic Arms prototype pistol chambered in 5.45 by 39 approved. That pistol never made it to market, but it gave ATF enough leverage. Since the cartridge could technically be fired from a handgun and featured a full steel core, it became armor-piercing by definition, and the ATF ordered customs to shut down all future imports. No debate. No judicial process, just a letter. The aftershock was massive. AK owners suddenly found their rifles orphaned, range toys turning into expensive curiosities, mags and parts spiked in cost, and on hand, surplus became worthless. And here's what really matters. That same one memo process now hangs over any steel core surplus round still floating today from Chinese Type 56 in 7.62 by 39 to Yugoslav M67 ball loads. No vote needed, one bureaucrat and a signature is all it takes. Media sensationalists love to demonize the 50 BMG, portraying it as a mad scientist weapon. Sure, it tosses a 700-grain projectile with nearly 13,000 foot-pounds of energy, but those rifles are heavy, expensive, and long. There's no criminal using a Barrett M82 to rob convenience stores. These are bench guns, precision tools for hobbyists and shooters on private land. Yet that hasn't stopped governments from banning them. California outlawed them in 2005, grandfathering existing ones. New Jersey banned any firearm capable of firing the round DC refuses to register them. Illinois swept them into a big ban in 2023, and Connecticut explicitly named the Barrett May 2 while ignoring other platforms. New York and Washington are weighing the same. Arguments about threats to airplanes, political assassinations, and cartel imports from Texas are repeated, yet no lawful 50 BMG case has ever been recorded. This isn't policy, it's optics. The big scary gun looks great on camera, and once that banning envelope is pushed, it's easier to pull smaller calibers 338 Lapua Magnum, 300 Winchester Magnum, 30-06 along with it. But this isn't hypothetical. Companies like Barrett rely on civilian sales to fund the research that also helps law enforcement and military gear. Shut that down and everyone loses. Even if you're not shooting 50 BMG today, the legal precedent created here will slide to the calibers you do keep in your safe. World War II era black tip armor. Piercing ammo in 30-6, along with its Cold War counterpart in 7.62 by 51 NATO, remains technically legal today, not thanks to logic or evidence, but because the ATF explicitly lists them as exempt. That exemption isn't codified in statute or reinforced by judicial decisions. It's just a bullet in an internal memo, erasable at any moment, no vote, no hearing, no transparency. The same admin process that nearly scrubbed green tip M155 in 2015 could just as easily eliminate these black tip rounds. All it takes is one bureaucrat claiming that steel-nosed or outdated calibers no longer serve sporting purposes. That's a standard so vague it could capture almost any ammo. Once that change hits, owning even a single black tip round could land you in legal trouble. Selling or gifting them, federal violation. The results would be devastating, not just financially. The entire vintage shooting culture would fracture. Collectors guarding these rounds for historical matches or civilian marksmanship program competitions could find themselves unwitting felons. CMP auctions offering cans of M2 armor. Piercing would vanish. Heirs inheriting ammo from veterans might be saddled with hazardous waste rules, sometimes costing more to dispose of than the ammunition's value. Cases full of historical ammo, potential contraband overnight. This isn't just clutter in a basement, it's a living community. Vintage service rifle shooters firing ceremonial salutes to veterans who stormed Normandy or froze at Bastogne would lose their ability to honor those traditions. And that's just the ceremonial side. Universities and ballistics labs studying mid-century armor penetration depend on original rounds. Strip access, and students revert to PDFs and blurry photos, no hands-on learning. Every niche ammo ban, no matter how obscure, teaches federal agencies what they can seize without causing an uproar. Ignoring these fringe rounds isn't smart. It's inching the wolves closer to your door. Steel cores aren't the only concern now. Modern armor piercing relies on tungsten, including military M993 in 7.62 and prototype XM 1158 ADV AP, which pair heavy tungsten slugs with copper jackets to defeat ceramic plates. Civilians can't buy those exact loads, but ammo makers are selling solid tungsten bullets for long-range shooting. Right now, they sidestep DOJ rules by mixing metals, but regulators are circling these rounds from two angles: environmental concerns about tungsten runoff and supply strain from military demand. Some states are already trying to classify all tungsten ammo as hazardous. Couple that with potential federal import bans, and reloaders using high ballistic coefficient solids could be priced out or suddenly criminalized. Next up, another exotic alloy vanadium, depleted duranium substitutes. Whatever comes next in R&D. And history shows the script repeats. Tech outpaces law, then gets banned before it's ever studied properly. The green tip fight only ended with tens of thousands of info-packed public comments. Beating tungsten requires even more environmental studies, supply chain analysis, and economic data. Many folks think Congress keeps agencies in line. Not true. The real power resides in a vague line in Section 925 of the Gun Control Act, particularly suitable for sporting purposes. Agencies use that phrase to block imports deemed unsporting. Decades ago, it killed off short-barreled shotguns and surplus pistols. Now, it's cutting off non-lethal force-on-force marking ammo. The rationale? Bureaucrats say civilian defensive training with non-lethal rounds isn't a sport. Never mind thousands of legal, organized active shooter or force-on-force classes happening nationwide. Some propose setting clear limits like a maximum velocity or muzzle energy, but numbers get outdated fast as technology advances. Since Chevron deference fell in 2024, courts are less likely to defer to agency interpretation, but those changes take years. Meanwhile, ammo shipments remain banned, and small trainers are sidelined. Picture this. March of 2026. News feeds erupt with a headline, ATF, Final Rule, 2603 has gone live. The rule doesn't outright ban guns. Instead, it quietly redefines what qualifies as a readily convertible pistol. Under this new language, any firearm with a detachable stabilizing brace and a bore diameter less than 1/2 inch is swept into the definition. Then, with a single bureaucratic pen stroke, that language gets linked to the federal armor-piercing ammunition statute. The outcome? Almost every common pistol, caliber, carbine, and compact egg variant gets dragged into a legal gray zone. If the cartridges they fire contain even a trace of steel in the jacket, even the kind found in surplus or cost-saving military loads, they're suddenly without exemption. Legal status evaporates overnight. One moment you're browsing for ammo online. The next, every site has flipped its listings to out of stock. Shipping companies freeze pending orders. Boxes that left the warehouse yesterday are rerouted, seized, or returned. Some drivers refuse to deliver anything marked as ammunition, unsure of what's now restricted. In parking lots and gun show aisles, private sellers hawk loose rounds at 10 times the going rate, while anxious buyers flash cash, asking, "Is this one still legal?" Retailers panic. Some pull ammo from shelves and lock their doors altogether, terrified of felony exposure for selling something that crossed a legal line no one saw coming. It gets worse. Congressional hearings kick off, but they're more performance than policy. A handful of veterans testify that M855 couldn't punch through a level 4 ceramic plate even in combat, but the headlines ignore them. Newspapers echo the phrase "cop killer bullets." Meanwhile, legal challenges inch forward, clogged in federal court calendars. Out at local ranges, carbine matches shrink. Many switch entirely to rimfire to stay in the clear. Ammo factories idle. Copper smelters scale down. Lead recyclers send their crews home. Truckers sit on full trailers with nowhere to deliver. The local news whines about job losses, but no one traces them back to the new rule. You leave another voicemail with your senator, the one who promised to defend the Second Amendment, only to realize that the public comment window for this rule slammed shut months ago. And that's exactly what regulators were counting on. Drop your guess below. Let's crowdsource a response plan before another surprise lands. Tap like so the algorithm can't hide the message. Subscribe with that bell turned on. We'll keep tracking the paperwork so you can stay ready and keep your mags topped off. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp out there.